And welcome to this week's episode of Square Mile of Murder.
If you're in the UK and if you've been watching ITV or STV for our fellow Scottish listeners, you may have seen the trailers for the TV show Quiz, which is a dramatization of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire major cheating scandal.
Now, some of you, like us, will be old enough to remember when this first happened. But for all you young fetuses out there, and anyone else who isn't familiar with the case, in 2001, Charles Ingram, a former army major, along with fellow contestant Tequan Whittock, cheated their way to the show's top prize of £1 million.
That's right, we have another fraud case this week.
We do. Just, a little bit of light fraud, just to get you through a lockdown. Nothing too heavy.
Yeah, I think these are fun. And this isn't just any old fraud case. It's another really crazy out there fraud case. And fittingly enough, one that involves a lot of coughing. So get ready for that. And, at least it's not the Corona brand coughing, which we're all so very worried about at the moment. This is a different kind of coughing.
So I've just been shopping this morning and I have really bad hay fever. I'm really allergic to pollen. So I'm walking up and down the supermarket aisles where they've got loads of fresh flowers and everything at the end of the aisle. And I'm like, don't cough, don't cough. Trying to get away from the flowers as quickly as possible, which of course you can't do because everyone is paced out throughout the supermarket.
Yeah.
Who knew?
We went outside for a little while on Saturday evening to Victoria Park and played catch as our daily exercise. But ever since we went and did that, my throat has been killing me, and I think it's because of all the pollen. And so my voice is all fucked up and I keep coughing and have a sore throat. I'm just like, oh my God, someone's going to come and put me in further lockdown because I sound like a plague monkey, but I promise I'm not. I just can't deal with pollen properly.
Yeah, I'm the same. So, back to fraud. So for those of you who have never seen an episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire...
Have you even lived?
So the basic premise is that it's a question and answer quiz show. You have to answer 15 questions correctly to win the top prize of £1 million. The value of the questions increases as you go on, and contestants have 3 lifelines: phone a friend, 50-50, and ask the audience, each of which can only be used once. And there are 2 safety nets, so question 5 is worth £1,000, question 10 is worth £32,000. So say if a contestant gets question 7 wrong, they can still walk away with £1,000, or if they get question 12 or 13 wrong, they still get the £32,000. And you can walk away with the money if you don't know the answer and don't want to risk it.
Yeah. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was my favorite show as a kid.
Yeah, we used to watch it all the time, when every night when it was on.
I just loved it. The American version was hosted by Regis Philbin. The Reg. I loved Reg. And I don't know, it's funny because I grew up watching Jeopardy, and that is definitely my favorite game show ever. But it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was kind of a more accessible version of Jeopardy, I think, because you had multiple choice answers, and so it's you had a 25% chance of being right. So it was even more fun to play along. To take part in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you have to audition. And if you're successful, you go on to be part of the fastest finger first round.
And cue immature giggling from 13-year-olds around the world.
Why is it fastest finger first? Surely fastest finger could have been enough.
I don't know.
It's confusing to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, 14 contestants in the studio battle to be the one in the hot seat by winning this wonderfully named fastest finger first round. They just want to make it hard for me to say.
Try saying that when you're drunk.
Yeah, exactly. So they're asked to put 4 answers into some sort of order. For example, put these names in alphabetical order or put these events in chronological order. And the one who correctly answers the quickest goes on to play for £1 million.
The UK version was the original, and at its peak in 1999, it was one of the most popular television shows in the country, recording its highest viewing figure of 19 million people, which at the time was 1/3 of the UK population.
It's a lot.
That is a lot of people watching the same show.
Yeah, it is. Especially, like, if you think about TV now, where nobody watches the same thing at the same time anymore.
No. Since I've been back at my parents' the last 2 weeks or so, that's the first time I've watched, like, appointment viewing. Like, everything else I watch on demand, but I'm like, oh, we actually watch TV.
Yeah.
According to what's on at a certain time.
Yeah, we were talking about it here the other day, and I was like, I used to know, like, the entire primetime week schedule when I was a teenager, you know. Grey's Anatomy was on at this time, and Bones is on at this, and all this stuff. And I couldn't tell you for £1 million today what fucking shows are on the air, because I don't watch any of them in sync with anything.
Yeah, in its 22-year history, there have only been 5 contestants to win the top prize.
Wow.
The format has been replicated across the world, and the Indian version was even the basis for the 2008 film Slumdog Millionaire. And with that, let's get into the story of Charles Ingram. It's a good one.
Born in the Derbyshire village of Shardlow in the East Midlands on August 6, 1963, Charles Ingram is the son of retired RAF Wing Commander John and theatre set designer Susan. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was privately educated at the Oswestry boarding school in Shropshire, West Midlands, which is how we think you're supposed to say that, but it's a weird word, so we're not sure.
I mean, Oswestry, there's not many ways you can really say that, I don't think.
Oswestry. Oswestry. There we go.
I was wrong. There are many ways you can say it. Increasing in ridiculousness.
Well, they have to increase in ridiculous, otherwise it's no fun. At Oswestry, he was a member of the Combined Cadet Force, which is a youth organization sponsored by the Ministry of Defense, and includes sections from the Royal Air Force, the Army, and the Royal Navy.
After leaving school, Ingram went on to complete a bachelor's degree in civil engineering at Kingston University. And in 1986, he trained for the British Army at Sandhurst and was commissioned as an officer in the Royal Engineers. In 1990, he was promoted to the rank of captain and promoted again in 1995, this time to the rank of major. In 1998, he served in Bosnia and Herzegovina as part of a UN peacekeeping mission. And in 2000, he completed a master's in corporate management. So,
busy guy.
Pretty successful career.
Yeah.
Through the 90s. You could think we'd all agree.
Mm-hmm. Charles Ingram met his wife Diana when she was training to be a teacher in South Wales. The two are married in 1989 and have 3 children together. Interestingly, both his wife, Diana, and her brother, Andy Pollock, competed on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire before Ingram's infamous turn on the show, and each walked away with £32,000. In preparation for his own turn on the show, Ingram built his own fastest finger first machine and spent at least 20 minutes a day practicing with it.
I mean, that's dedication.
Oh, yeah. I could practice those fast fingers for 20 minutes every day.
The There's no way to say it without sounding
No, there's not.
dirty, is
No,
there?
it's not possible.
Just sounds wrong. On September 9th and 10th, 2001, Ingram was a contestant on the show, which at the time typically recorded a few days in advance. And by the time shooting finished on the first day, he'd reached question 7, which was worth £4,000, and had used 2 of his lifelines. The host, Chris Tarrant, and other members of the production staff doubted he would advance much further when production resumed the following day.
However, on the second day of filming, Ingram's luck seemed to have changed, and he made his way to the top prize of £1 million.
I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? A couple of days on the telly, win a cool meal, and everyone thinks you're brainy as fuck.
It's a pretty good deal, if you ask me.
Yeah. What more do you want?
But not everyone was convinced with Ingram's performance, and questions soon began to pop up about how a man who had struggled just to get to the £4,000 mark on the first day of filming suddenly just climbed his way all the way to the top on the second day with seemingly no issues. And shortly after filming ended, Celador, the show's production company, canceled the £1 million payout after they suspected Ingram had cheated on the show.
Suspicions were first raised by a sound technician who reported loud coughing coming from one of the waiting contestants, which corresponded to the right answers. The technician then contacted Celador CEO Paul Smith and asked if they should cease filming, but Smith ordered the crew to carry on, telling them that they would review the footage before editing and obviously before release. Upon review, producers also noticed that Ingram seemed to move erratically between the 4 answers before finally settling on one. And, it was only once a cough had been heard that he finally settled. But before that, he would just go from A, B, D, E, blah, 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 blah. He would just read through them so quickly before finally settling once the right answer had been coughed at. Celador accused Ingram and his wife of defrauding the show by enlisting an accomplice amongst the waiting contestants, lecturer Tequin Whittock, who would cough when Ingram read out a correct answer. That is a name, Tequin Whittock.
It really is. When I first started, it was like, how the fuck do you say that?
Yeah. That's not one you hear every day.
No, definitely unique. Ingram and Whittock allegedly met on the set of the show as they were both fastest finger first contestants. And after Ingram's first day in the hot seat, the pair were accused of cooking up a scheme. And the scheme seemed to be, if there was a question that Ingram was struggling with, he could read through the answers and Whittock would cough when he read out the correct answer. And after, they would split the proceeds. After reviewing the footage, Celador CEO Paul Smith spoke to the Ingrams, informing them of, quote, irregularities in which you participated, end quote. I love that. And told them that they would not be airing the program or authorizing payment of the check. Ingram responded, stating, I completely refute that, obviously.
It always amuses me when cases like this are talked about and it's always like, the accused I deny this or I refute this. And I'm like,
yeah.
Well, they're not going to turn around and admit it, are they?
No. Yeah.
It amuses me.
I deny this uncategorically. Well, of course you do, sir.
When a contestant wins or walks away, takes the money and walks, the host, who was Chris Tarrant at the time, I think is now Jeremy Clarkson.
Oh, yeah.
In an interesting turn of events. Writes a check out there and then, and as far as I can find, that check is actually legally binding. So had Celador not contacted the police and their bank, the Ingrams could have just gone and cashed the check the next morning.
They clearly should have.
They should have run from the studio.
24-hour bank, where are you at? As well as coughing when Ingram read out the correct answer, Whittick is also accused of, at one point, loudly whispering the word no, when on the second to last question, worth 500,000 pounds, Ingram almost went for the wrong answer.
No.
God. I just like, that's so dumb. No.
Yeah, he's supposedly covered it with a cough, like no, no.
Oh my God. Smooth, guys.
But it's still not a very good cover.
It's not good.
Charles Ingram, his wife Diana, and accomplice Tequin Whittick were all charged with procuring the execution of a valuable security by deception, which to all of us is known as fraud by deception.
To all of us who don't speak legalese.
All three of them pled not guilty, and the case went to court in the spring of 2003. Once the trial began, the prosecution also claimed that along with the coughing scandal, the trio had also cheated on the first day using pagers. Charles Ingram had a pager hidden up on his person, and his wife and Whittick would text or ring, however, I don't know how pagers worked.
I think you
That's
called
slightly
it.
before our time. Yeah, when the correct answer was read out, which would cause it to vibrate. And the prosecution even produced Diana's phone records to back up their claims.
I love that. It's pretty smart, actually. Like, tape a pager to your ankle and...
Problem is, I'd probably jump every time it went off.
Yeah, no, I'd forget and it'd scare the hell out of me, and I think that might give you away. So it turned out that the production crew weren't the only ones who'd picked up on the coughing coming from Whittick on the second day of filming. One of the witnesses called by the prosecution was Larry Whitehurst, who is a fellow fastest finger first contestant. Now, you just wanted to make that hard for me, didn't you? Because you put fellow fastest finger first. Now, if you really wanted to do, it would be a Larry Whitehurst, a fellow fastest finger first friend.
Now you're just making it difficult for yourself.
Whitehurst stated that he'd been watching Whittick from across the studio after he heard coughing coming from his direction when the right answer was read out, and suspected that he was involved in some kind of cheating scheme.
Whitehurst also stated that he knew the correct answer to the £1 million question, and he watched Whittick to see if he coughed when the right answer was read out. So he coughed first when host Chris Tarrant read it out, and then again when Ingram read out his options. So twice coughed under the right answer.
This guy Whitehurst should have just started coughing on all the wrong answers to try to throw everyone off.
I mean, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
Just symphony of coughs
going on left, right, and centre. Somebody's unleashed a plague into the studio.
Some sort of...
This was 2001. What was around then? What, SARS? Was that around?
Not yet.
No, was that later?
What amazes me, and I think the reason that maybe I didn't hear about this is because it was September 9th and 10th of 2001.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that the news of this didn't quite travel to the States as much.
Yeah, because I mean, if it was filmed on them 2 days, it would still be a few days before it hit the press. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing the research, because I remember it happening, but I didn't remember that it was around the same time as 9/11. But yeah, it was until I was doing the research and I was like, maybe it's not quite as well known outside the UK for that reason.
Blah 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 blah. Yes, we're all coughing and answering. Host Chris Tarrant also took the stand at the trial and claimed he didn't hear any suspicious coughing, and that after winning, the Ingrams acted like any other couple who had just won £1 million.
Okay, so I'm not questioning Chris Tarrant's version of events, but I do wonder if, as an experienced TV presenter, who's used to working in front of a live studio audience, he would have just learned how to tune all that stuff out over the years. You know, if you're focused on like the task in hand, it might not register what's going on in the audience.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I remember when I would like be playing sports as a teenager, and you know, if my parents would come to a game or something afterwards, they'd be like, did you hear us like yelling your name? And I'd be like, I heard nothing of the sort. Like, it's kind of just, it goes by you. And when you're focused on
you're
something
just focused
else.
On, yeah.
When Ingram took the stand, he appeared to throw his wife and Whittock under the bus. He claimed that he had been devastated to hear of Diana's calls to Whittock. He also stated that once the allegations had become public, his car had been vandalized and he had cheat shouted at him in public, and that these events led to him having to take medication to cope. What a poor man.
His commander from when he served in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1998 appeared as a character witness at the trial and said that Charles was quote, an officer of the utmost integrity and complete honesty, unquote. I don't really put too much stock in character witnesses, because you're not going to have someone as a character witness unless they've only seen a good side of you and only have good things to say.
Yeah.
And in the army, he could have been an officer of the utmost integrity and honesty, but that doesn't speak to his character outside of military life.
Yeah, exactly. Diana Ingram was next to take the stand. She told the court that her phone calls to a pager were not to Whittock, but to a pager her brother owned. Diana claimed that her brother had, quote, disappeared owing to issues with his finances and bank, and that he was using his pager to keep in contact with her. One of her brothers, Marcus Powell, did attend the first day of recording, where he was seen using his mobile phone around the studio 3 times and was told to stop by the production crew.
That is an interesting take.
Yeah.
If her brother was in such financial, sort of, in that kind of financial state, it would probably be easy enough for investigators to check up, by, especially if the problem is with the bank, by going to the brother's bank and being like, hey, were there issues around this time? Did you have problems contacting this person? Blah, blah, blah.
But, well, and also they could conceivably check the brother's, like, phone records and stuff to, you know, see who he's calling or whatever. Although, pagers and it's a different time.
Yeah. So finally, Tequin Whittock took to the stand. He claimed his coughing was caused by a combination of hay fever and dust allergies. And whilst I don't believe him, can this please be the year that we finally start to take hay fever seriously as a legitimate allergy?
Yeah, amen.
Because it's really pissing me off. Okay, so as I said earlier, I am severely allergic to pollen. And some years it's not so bad, some years it's really severe, depending on where I am and what crops are being grown in the area. But some years I like struggle to be outside from like Easter to the end of harvest season, because it's a real allergy and you're literally allergic to the air at this point.
Yeah, because it's in everything.
And like, if someone's allergic to nuts or shellfish or something like that, you wouldn't open a bag of peanuts or
shrimp,
like prawns or something, and just shove them in that person's face and be like, are you really allergic? No, you wouldn't, because that's a fucking dick move. Someone did that to me once because they said that you only get pollen allergies in the summer. Apparently your allergies have a little hibernation nap over winter. So they picked up a bunch of flowers, shoved them in my face, and I threw up all over them.
See?
The person, not the flowers. I threw up all over their shoes.
That'll teach them.
Yeah, they never questioned it again. Also, right, when I was like 19 and an undergrad, one day I was talking to one of the girls that I lived with, and the conversation got around to boys and flowers somehow. Don't ask. Don't remember. And I happened to mention that like no boy had ever bought me flowers, which I never really thought was a big deal, but apparently it's a big deal that no one's bought you flowers when you're 19. So anyway, the girl I was talking to, she suddenly like jumped up and shot out of the room shouting that she'd be back soon. And I was kind of used to her doing things like that. She did have a very, not like one-track mind, but she would suddenly like...
Flights of fancy.
Just jump up and go and do something else. And anyway, about 15, 20 minutes later, she comes back with this huge bouquet of flowers. And she's telling me she felt so sad because no boy had ever bought me flowers, so she'd bought some for me. And I'm like, babes, if you'd let me finish, nobody's ever bought me flowers because I'm really allergic. So if someone buys me flowers, I hit them with them. And she was like, oh.
I see.
But luckily, they were mostly sunflowers and bamboo. So sunflowers are my favourite flowers, and I can actually have them in my room without dying.
That's good.
Because they're not a particularly strong pollen scent. And then the others I gave back to her. I was like, yeah, I can't breathe.
You keep these.
Take them, please. So yeah, hay fever. It is real.
It is real.
Even if we don't believe that this guy.
Yeah.
We don't believe this guy, but it is a real allergy.
Yeah.
Please take it seriously and do not shove flowers in people's faces.
No.
It is rude.
I mean, that's just kind of rude anyway. Like, don't do that to people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just not do that to people. Besides, you're all supposed to be 2 meters away from one another, so.
Yeah, you'd have to have really good aim.
Yeah.
You'd have to get like a nice tight spiral on the flowers and just like... I feel like we've got enough track again.
I feel like we have gotten off track slightly.
And it was my fault this week.
That's a change.
Yeah, you had all the canoe stories last week. I've got all the allergies
That's
this week.
true. Right. So despite Whittick's claims that he suffered from hay fever and dust allergies, his allergies seemed to sort of miraculously clear up once Ingram had won, and Whittick got his own shot in the hot seat. And he claimed that this was because he drank several glasses of water, which had soothed his throat.
Still not buying it.
No.
So how is he suffering so badly with hay fever inside a studio? Because, you know, you'll have gone in through the main doors and there'll be like a rabbit's warren of corridors to get you to where the studio that you're actually filming in. So how is there so many allergens in the studio? Unless he was sitting next to someone with like really strong flowery perfume, because that can do it as well.
Well, I mean, and also like television studios tend to be very particularly like temperature controlled and have like, you know, ventilation systems and all that stuff. So it seems highly unlikely that someone just left a window open backstage and all this pollen is wafting directly onto this guy's general location. Whittick at one point claimed that it was merely coincidental that he coughed when the correct answers were read out, and also that it was an involuntary reaction to hearing the right answers.
But it can't be both a coincidence and an involuntary reaction, can it?
I mean...
have I missed something there? It can't be both.
I mean, it just doesn't seem likely, certainly. Whittick's doctor and a number of his friends all testified to him having had a persistent cough for many years, and that drinking water did soothe his throat. His defense also put forward the argument that Ingram could not have agreed to a scheme as outlined by the prosecution because Whittick would have been unreliable due to his cough.
Despite the defense's arguments, on April 7th, 2003, all three defendants were found guilty of procuring the execution of a valuable security by deception.
It's my favorite now.
I can remember the words. I can't remember what order they go in. Yeah, what is your favourite crime? Execution, valuable...
Deception,
procuring.
security.
Yeah, that's the one. The Ingrams were each sentenced to 18 months in jail, and Tequan Wittek was sentenced to 12 months in jail. All 3 sentences were suspended for 2 years, and they were fined a total of £52,500, including defence costs, although these were later reduced on appeal.
However, the guilty verdict was not without its own controversies. In the years since the trial, many different experts and commentators have come up with their own theories as to what really happened and claim that the 3 defendants are in fact innocent.
One of these comes from journalist John Ronson, who I always want to call Ron Johnson. It's a strange one. He attended the trial and covered the case for The Guardian newspaper, and he stated that when coffin was mentioned in court, members of the jury and public gallery all began to cough, and he points to this as an example of being like subconsciously triggered into coughing rather than coughing on purpose. But my issue with this is that when it happened in the studio, when this happened in court, they were triggered by the word cough, whereas in the studio, no one was talking about coughing. So what's the trigger there?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that only works if, say, you could make the argument that, like, what's his name? Ingram approached Wittek and was like, listen, here's my plan. I'm going to go up and try to answer these questions, but if I get stuck, you cough when I read out the right answer. And Wittek was like, no, I don't want to do that, but then subconsciously started doing it anyway. But that seems very unlikely.
Yeah. I'd never thought of that. So yeah. But again, that's unlikely, because if you were in that situation, you'd be doing everything in your power to not cough.
Well, and also if he was approached and said no and then wasn't involved, he'd fucking tell the producers, because it means he's one step closer to getting, his chance at winning the money and getting this guy thrown out of the studio.
This is true.
So. True. We disagree. Ron Ronson. Now, another theory comes from a previous contestant of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, James Plaskett, who had sat in the same fastest finger first seat as Wittek. Rather than the coughing, he addresses the claims that Wittek loudly whispered no when Ingram almost went for the wrong answer. He said that it wasn't unknown for contestants to audibly say words such as no when they knew the answers and the contestant in the hot seat was about to go for the wrong answer, and that this was what was happening in Wittek's case.
I can see where he's coming from, because the fastest fingering contestants did sit in a semicircle and they did talk to who was sat next to them, or whisper, and during filming, because they don't have mics on or anything, so it's not going to pick much up really. So that I can understand, but coughing at the right answers,
yeah, that's different.
Still, yeah, I still think there was something going on with the coughing, even if you can argue away the whole stage whisper no.
Yeah, exactly.
As being like an involuntary action, like no.
Well, and also like
no.
If that were true, if this James Plaskett's theory were true, then surely Wittek would have included it in his testimony and been like, no, here's what happened. It was all just,
Yeah, that's true.
It's just idle chatter between us.
Maybe you should have done.
I know, right?
Following the trial, although his sentence was suspended, Charles Ingram was forced to resign from his role as a major in the British Army, and the case became known as the Major Fraud or the Major Cheat because of his rank in the army,
which I really love.
which I just think is funny.
I didn't realize.
Easily amused.
I didn't realize at first that I just thought it was like a really big deal fraud, but because it was a major fraud. But no, in fact, it was something else entirely.
Yeah. Well, it works both ways.
It
wasn't. Anytime anyone cheats on like a massive
national scale, technically,
quiz show, yeah, it's a major scandal. So works both ways.
I like it. It's very fitting. Now, this was not the last we would hear of the Ingrams, because just 6 months later, in October 2003, Charles Ingram was found guilty at Bournemouth Crown Court of obtaining a pecuniary advantage by deception. Oh boy, here's another one. And of a second charge of deception, having attempted to claim on an insurance policy after an alleged burglary at his home. And for those of you who, like us, don't know what pecuniary advantage might mean, it means a financial advantage.
See, just see how kind we are. We Google these words and make ourselves sound uneducated, so you don't have to.
Yeah, we've done the legwork for you.
Yeah. So that, all those long words basically mean Ingram had failed to tell his current insurance provider, Direct Line, about claims he had made in the years before he took out a policy in July 2001. The court was told that Ingram had become a quote-unquote habitual claimant with his previous provider, Norwich Union, after suffering unfortunate losses of private possessions. Ingram ended up making fraudulent claims worth a total of £30,000. His providers were suspicious but had given him the benefit of the doubt until they read about his performance on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and decided to investigate further. And like we said when we talked about John Darwin, the canoe man, insurance companies have endless resources to investigate you if they think you're trying to defraud them. Police are very limited in resources and funding and stuff, but insurance companies are not.
Yeah, so they'll find you out, buddy. So after being found guilty, he was given a conditional discharge. The judge said he took into account, quote, the punishment you have brought upon yourself and your dire financial state, which is really, I just love that. It's your own fault.
I mean, that's a very sassy judge.
Yeah, really,
you know?
It really is.
Yeah, you brought it upon yourself by being a dick with your money. Since the scandal, Ingram has appeared on a number of celebrity edition of television shows, including The Game, Weakest Link, and Wife Swap.
Oh no.
And he's also written two books called The Network and Deep Siege, both of which received mixed reviews.
Can we just talk for a moment? Now, I don't know if you know this, but do you know if when he appeared on The Weakest Link, what's her name, Anne, was still hosting?
Anne Robinson.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Because I would pay £1 million to see her rip this guy apart.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, but he appeared on Weakest Link. It was like a celebrity couples edition, and he appeared on it with Diana. So, yeah, we need to hunt around on YouTube and see if we can dig out.
I
dig out these clips.
I have to say,
we need to see it.
I love The Weakest Link so much. I always loved that show.
I haven't watched it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was always like so sassy.
I just love how, you know, she dresses down all of these people who think they're so smart, and it's just like, why didn't you bank anything, you morons? So yeah, that is the case of the major cheat. Thank you for listening, and come tell us what you think in our Facebook group, Square Mile of Murder, the podcast, or you can find us on Instagram at Square Mile of Murder.
You can also, should you feel inclined, support the show by joining our Patreon. Head to www.patreon.com/Square Mile of Murder for more information, and you can sign up to it for as little as $1 a month. Which is about 81p. So it's cheaper than a can of Iron Brew. And the economy's bad, so it's cheaper than it was last week. Or you can head to our website, squaremileofmurder.com, where you can find other ways to support the show without costing you a penny or a cent.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.